Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Planetary Painter, and I'm going to be sipping on some elderberry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, Mars black, fire red, fluorescent pink, burnt umber, which I will call brown, and deep yellow. Of course, you can switch those up if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I've got a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have two brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush and a number 5 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process, and of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and chalk and brushes and all the other good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing for the first step is I'm going to be painting my background. I'm going to be using a large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using black paint only. So I'm going to be painting my entire canvas with black paint, so I have a really nice dark and beautiful night background for all of my galaxy, my stars, and my atmosphere that I'm going to be painting on there. You could, if you wanted to, you could certainly use a pre-primed black canvas. The only downfall with that is it is designed to, the primer that you buy, that it's created with, is designed to allow the paint to adhere to the raw canvas. It's not necessarily designed to be the final coat of your painting. So if you do work with a pre-primed black canvas, you'll just want to make sure that you put a final clear coat over it after it's done to make sure that it ages properly. And as I'm doing this, I'm not doing any specific brush stroke. I'm kind of going left to right, but you'll see at times I'm going to be going up and down on those sides. When you're painting with black paint, the direction of the brush stroke is not super important, because the black will cover very well, and those paint strokes will not be visibly detected if you have a nice even coat on it once it dries. So you can really use any brush stroke that you'd like to. And then once you've got this all nice and done, you couldn't even paint the edges or the sides of your canvas if you want it to look nice and complete. But once we've got this done, we will be using this same paintbrush for the next step. So when you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm going to be doing the first layer of my stars in the galaxy. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, I'm going to be using white paint, and I'm going to be using a flicking type of technique. So what I'm going to do, this typically works best with a very firm brush that has bristles that are stiff, kind of. Mine are kind of on the longer side. You could do this with like a toothbrush or any sort of brush that has some nice firm bristles to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the tip of my brush with some white paint, and I'm going to get really dirty while I'm doing this. So if you don't want to get dirty, you can put some gloves on, and or anything around your canvas that might be in firing range, if you don't want it to get paint on it, you might want to cover it up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start flicking this onto my canvas. I may get little streaks every now and again, which is totally fine because I'll just call that a shooting star. But I'm going to get a million little tiny white dots throughout my painting right now. We will be doing a second layer of stars later, so just know that you don't need to get all of the stars on here that are going to make up the entire galaxy. This is just intended to be our far off in the distance stars that are going to have a nice glow to them when we put some colors on top of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and make myself a million little stars, and then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, if you need to wash your hands, go ahead, but you'll want to wash this brush in preparation for the next step. I'm going to try and pick up my cup here without getting too much paint on it, and just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the colors in the galaxy. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using red, pink, yellow, and blue. And I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you want to make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using these four colors, and I'm going to be, in essence, kind of rubbing them on all over the place. My paint is a thin-bodied student grade paint, which tends to be on the more translucent side. So I'm using that to my advantage in order to get this great atmospheric type of feel and look to it with these different colors in it. And I will be able to see these stars underneath it. So all these stars are going to end up turning different colors. So if you're not quite sure if yours is a translucent type of paint, what you can do, I'm going to start with some pink. You can take a little bit of your paint and find, a nice bright star and paint over that star. And if you can still see the star underneath your paint, then it's translucent or transparent and you're good to go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this color and I'm going to do some areas with pink. I'm just going to kind of rub it all around. It's going to be pretty bright when it's wet, and it will dry darker because it's going to take on the color of the black behind it. So you can see this one is starting to get darker and darker as it dries. And I'm going to incorporate all of the colors within the sky. So I'm not going to wash my brush, but now I'm going to pick up some red paint, and I'm going to do some areas with red paint, and I'm just really kind of scrubbing it on there. You can overlap your areas. You can get them to intermingle with one another so it looks like they're just kind of merging into each other. You can do whatever intensity that you want. Again, it will dry darker and you'll be able to see those stars underneath it. I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow now. So again, you can do any color combination or order that you want. And then you could even do multiple layers. So as yours is drying, if you're finding that you want it to be even more intense and have more of this atmospheric color within the sky, you can certainly add another layer to it. If you feel that it goes too light, you can always bring back some of the black or anything like that, but you'll be surprised at by the time it dries how much you're going to be able to see through it and how much it will take on that black behind it. I'm going to pick up some blue paint now, and without washing my brush, because I want all these colors to talk to each other, so I didn't wash my brush. And of course you can overlap them onto each other. You can bring this all the way to the edges, or you can leave some of those edges black. Wherever your visual preference is totally fine. And I'm just going to kind of keep doing this until I've got as much in that background as is making my painterly eye happy. And again, you can continue to make these colors work together. So if you wanted it to be little purple, you could take the blue and the pink on your brush at the same time. I know that blue and pink is going to make a beautiful purple color, so I can put that onto the canvas. So you can really just have a whole bunch of fun making this into whatever kind of intensity that you want for this galaxy background. Again, we're going to be putting more stars on top of it, so have fun finishing this up, and then we will be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do our second layer of our stars in the galaxy. So I'm going to be, oh, and we're going to do the land that her ladder's on, which we'll call Earth. So I'll do the Earth down at the bottom. I'm going to use my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using white for my stars, and then I'm going to be using blue, yellow, and white for the Earth. So how I'm going to do this is the same way I did the first layer of the stars. So I'm just going to pick up some white on the end of my brush, and I'm just going to start flicking them away. So again, you can have as many stars as you want. This galaxy is dictated by your visual preference. So if you want, 7 billion stars, then you make 7 billion stars. I'm going to just kind of do a nice layer on here of my white stars. So what happened, because we did that background layer, we're going to have varying colors within our stars. We have the white ones that we did, or the first layer that we did is now all colored with that atmospheric colors that we put on. And then this layer is going to be white because we're putting it on top of those other colors. And again, you can use any kind of flicking method that you want, and you can put as many on here as you want. But once you've got enough that makes you, again, happy, what I'm going to do is I am going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I don't even need to wash it because I want to use some of that white. I am wiping my hands too this time. So I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel so I have some white on there, and I'm going to pick up some blue and a teeny tiny bit of yellow, because the blue and the yellow will make green, but I want an assortment of the blues and greens within this base. So I'm going to come up on this left hand side maybe about an inch, inch and a half, and then on the bottom right hand corner I'm going to make a mark down in the bottom right hand corner. I'm going to give myself kind of like this little sloping hill that's going to represent the edge of the Earth. And I know I don't want a lot of paint on my brush, and I don't want it to be too light, so I feel like that's a little bit too light. So I'm going to wipe my brush off again on my paper towel just so I can just use the remnants that I have on my brush, and this will give me a nice way to give myself some soft kind of textural type of effect to the land. I just picked up a bit more blue. I know that the blue is going to be translucent and you're going to be able to see through some of it, but if you had too much white on your brush right now, if you felt that it was turning a little bit lighter than you wanted, you could certainly pick up a touch of black as well. I'm going to make my edge to be nice and fluffy, like it's being illuminated by the planets. I'm picking up a touch more white paint so I can get this edge to be a little bit lighter up towards the top, so it looks like it's being illuminated by the planets. And if you wanted any more to look like it's a little bit more green, you could certainly pick up the yellow and the blue at the same time, and that'll give you a little bit more of a greenish look to it. And then of course you can play with it as much as you want. I'm keeping it a little bit darker as it's coming down towards the bottom of the canvas, so that way it looks like it's kind of going into the shadows. And if you needed to, you could certainly add a little bit of black down at the bottom if you had it go too light. And then we're going to be utilizing our chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our girl, our ladder, and our planets. I'm going to be using my chalk, and I do recommend again that your canvas is nice and dry before you start this step, because it's easier to draw on a dry canvas than it is on a wet canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be guiding you through some lines and some basic shapes and connecting some dots and all that good stuff, and by the time we're done we'll have a nice guide that we can follow through the painting process. So I'm going to start with my ladder. I'm going to have my ladder a little bit to the left of the center of my canvas, and of course it's going to be landing on my Earth in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of find myself center from left to right on my land, somewhere in through here. I'm going to go up about, I would say, maybe 4 inches and to the left a little bit. This is where I'm going to start the top right-hand corner of my ladder. Then I'm going to give myself a horizontal line that's about 2.5 inches wide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the tops of 2 triangles for the legs of the ladder. I'm going to follow this straight down to my land and come about 1 inch down into my land and about an inch over to the left, make myself a marker, connect here to here, do the same exercise here, follow it straight down and come to the left a little bit, connect those two. And then what I'm going to do for the right side is I'll come to the right of this a little bit, maybe about 1/4 inch or so, and come straight down, or maybe about 1/2 inch, and come into my land just a little bit. So I don't want it as far in as that one, and then connect these two. So same thing, go to the right a little bit, come down into your land, and then just connect those two. So that, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be painting over it, so if you need to make any corrections later, that's okay. I'm going to, the top area where the girl is going to be standing, I'm going to just kind of make myself a little bit of a thicker line in through there. And then I'm going to put 4 steps coming down my ladder. I'm going to start with the bottom one so that way I can kind of keep myself in check as to the height that I want them. I want the first one to be a little bit higher than this marker in through here. So just a little bit higher than that one and just bring it straight across. And then I'm going to do 3 more. So 1, 2, and then 3. And they don't have to be perfect. Again, we're going to be painting over them. So that's all I'm going to do for my ladder. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my girl. I'm going to start with a vertical line. That's going to be kind of the center part of her body, or at least give us a place to build her body off of. So I'm going to find about the halfway mark between my ladder and make myself a little bit of a marker in through here. And then I'm going to go straight up from that. So it just travels, oops, I just made some chalk mark on my canvas, straight up from that. And I'm going to stop maybe about 4 inches from the top of my canvas. So somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to make myself a line that's just going to connect these 2 markers that I just made. It doesn't have to be a perfectly straight line. That's just giving us a starting point and a building point. So then I'm going to visually find about the halfway point between the top and the bottom of my vertical line, and I'm going to come down from that about 1 inch. This is going to represent the bottom part of her shirt. I'm going to pull this line out to the right, I would say about 1 inch, and on the left hand side I'm going to go about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So I want that left hand side to be a little bit further out because of the way her body is positioned. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw her torso, or a shape for her torso, so we can build her arms and her head off of that. So I'm going to come about 1/3 of the way down from, if I was to cut this into about 3rd sections, that's about how far down I want to come, so somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to make myself a kind of lopsided rectangle, soft rectangle type of a shape for her torso. So this is going to be the bottom of her shirt. So over here I'll just kind of bring this out a little bit, and then I will kind of bring it down in a not totally straight line, just something that's got a little bit of bend to it. And I'll do the same thing on the left side. The left side, I'm going to have it kind of kick in a little bit more at what we'll refer to as her waist. So it gives her a little bit more movement in her body. So I'm going to come to the left of this just a little bit. And then when I come down in through here, I'm still kind of following this line, but I'm going to give it a little bit more of kind of a kick out in through here, or like a little dip in for her shirt. Then I'm going to put her legs on. So on the right hand side, this center line is going to kind of represent the left side of this right leg. So it'll be like her pants and stuff like that. So I'm going to come in from this corner just a little bit. This is going to be the outside part of her leg, and I'm just going to bring this down in a nice kind of casual, it can have a little bit of ripple to it if you want to, line that's going to bring it down to here. That's going to represent the bottom part of her leg. We'll put her feet and all that good stuff on later. This is just going to be the bottom part of her pant. And then I'm going to do the left hand leg. Again, I'm going to come in just a little bit from the edge of that shirt. This leg is going to be kicked out. So what I want to do is about halfway down this line, I'm going to make myself about a diagonal line. This is going to represent her leg being kicked out, as if she's, you know, standing on one leg. I'm going to go to the left of this, maybe about, I would say, 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Give myself the rest of that part. This is going to be the end of her pants. She's going to have a little tiny foot somewhere in through here. Doesn't even have to be perfect, but it's off the ladder a little bit. And then I just need to connect this back side of the leg like this. So think of this as the inside where her knee is, and this is the back of her leg. And this will look much better when we paint it. So then I'm going to put her head on. We already know where the top of her head is. I'm just going to make myself kind of this oval type of shape. She's going to have a long ponytail on her head, so we don't really have to worry about too much detail right now. So just like that. I'm going to do her left arm first, which is going to be holding a painter's palette. So I'm going to consider this to be her shoulder in through here. This is her waist, which is typically where our elbows reach on our body. So I'm going to take this, come down maybe about an inch, and then just kick this out for her little elbow like that. And then this is going to kind of go straight up. It's going to meet a palette here in a second. I'm going to do the same thing for the top part of her arm, so just bring it down just a little bit and then straight up for her forearm. So again, this is going to be like the back side of her arm. That'll be her forearm. And then I'm going to draw the shape of a palette on top of her arm. So something like this, just a big oval kind of shape with a little bit of ergonomic kind of bends in it. Yours doesn't have to be that way if you don't want to. And she's going to have her finger kind of coming through here. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a marker like that, where her thumb is going to be holding on to that easel or the palette. So then I'm going to make her right arm. So again, here's her shoulder in through here. She's going to be reaching up, painting the sky. So again, for a good point of measurement for her elbow, you can always use like your small brush or something to kind of test how far down from her shoulder her elbow would be. So if this is about her waist, that's about how long her elbow should be. And then you can kind of just swing it on up, and that'll give you kind of a marker where that elbow or the bend of the arm would go. So this is going to be the elbow. I'm going to bring this back down in a diagonal way down her body on the side, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the top part of her arm to meet her shoulder, so somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to have her little forearm going up like this, and she's going to have her little shirt here, and then just a little hand. I don't need to do much for the hand right now, just kind of giving the information where it is. Then I'm going to make a whole bunch of circles for my planets. You can really be as carefree with this as you want. I'm going to have them all different sizes. I'm going to have 8 or 9. You could certainly have as many as you want. I definitely want to have one in through here. So this will represent the one that she is kind of in the process of painting. I'll just put it a little bit away from her actual hand itself. And I'm going to have some medium-sized ones, maybe a little tiny one in through here. Maybe we'll have a part of a big one over in through here, maybe a little tiny one here. I'll have a bigger one in through here, and then maybe a partial one coming off here. And I think that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You could have as many as you want, but that's how many I'm going to have. I'm going to be using my small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, do any kind of modifications that you need to, and then just get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our ladder. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black and white. You could certainly paint your ladder whatever color you'd like, but I'm going to just go for a nice gray color for my ladder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting the underside of the ladder, which is going to be these two back legs of it. I'll do those nice and dark, and I'm going to paint the rest of it kind of just a nice grayish color. We'll do some shadows underneath it and then some highlights on the top, and then we'll be done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a nice gray color. So this will be just a medium gray. I don't need it too light or too dark. Just somewhere in the middle will be just fine. You just want to make enough of it so you don't run out. So This is maybe a little bit lighter than that. And it will turn a little bit darker as it dries, one, because it's got the, because it's gray, and two, because it has the black underneath it, or the dark colors underneath it. So it may turn a little bit darker as it dries, so just kind of plan for that. Then once you've got the color that you want, what I'm gonna do without washing my brush, I'm actually gonna pick up a little bit of black. So I have gray plus black on my brush right now. I'm gonna paint these two back legs with this gray and black on my brush. So what this is gonna do is it will make these back legs a little bit darker than the ones that we're going to be doing in a minute. So these ones will look like they're in the shadow. So you can make them as dark as you want, but the darker they go, the more you'll be able to, they'll look like they're on the underside. I'm painting right over these steps because the steps will be painted on top of them in a minute. But this is just getting us that color that we want for the nice dark undercolor of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm just picking up some of the gray color, and I'm going to paint the rest of the ladder with just the gray color. We'll put highlights on it in a minute, but right now I'm just going to get it painted in with this solid gray color. You might find that you want the legs of it to be wider than mine. You can have them more narrow than mine. Whatever is visually appealing to you is totally fine. You can have a really big, sturdy kind of ladder, or just a nice, thin, small ladder that this young person could handle carrying out into the wilderness as they're painting the sky or painting the galaxy. And if you have like little light spots and dark spots throughout this gray, that is okay. Just you want to make it so it's a pretty solid color, so you don't see the background colors underneath it. So gray is really good for coverage, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. But if you do, you could just do, multiple layers if you had to. I'm going to do the steps right now. So again, just picking up that gray color, and I'm going to paint it right over the this left hand back one that we did. And again, this is just intended to be a nice fun painting, so it doesn't have to be, don't consider the need to make it photorealistic. We're just gonna have fun with getting the impression that this is a ladder. We are giving, this little person somewhere to step on so they can reach the beautiful sky. And so if your steps are not perfect, if they're little crooked or anything like that, that's okay. So once I've got this done, I'm going to put a couple little highlights on these steps so they have a little bit of dimension to them. So without washing my brush, I'm just picking up a little bit of white with that gray that I had. So on this top step in through here, if you put the highlight a little bit away from the bottom's edge, that's going to make it look like it's got a little bit of a platform to it. So I'm putting a little bit of the lighter color away from this bottom edge, and I have a little bit of chalk down at the bottom that it might be distracting, so I'm putting my highlight a little bit away from the bottom's edge of that gray. So again, you can do the same thing on the steps themselves. So don't put it totally at the bottom, and that's going to make it look like it's got a little bit of a 3D type of look to it. And again, I'm not going for photorealism, but I'm definitely like to have the dimension represented in my paintings. So now that I've got that, I'm going to put a little shadow underneath my ladder. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and under my ladder I want there to be a shadow that's represented from my light source, which I'm going to consider my stars and my planets to be the light source. So I'm going to have this kind of coming out at a diagonal. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm using a little bit of water on my brush. So what I like to do is I'm going to kind of dip my brush in water. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint so it's really translucent. I can always add more, but starting with a very little bit helps me to control where it goes. And then I want these to come back at a diagonal so I can kind of see them. So I'm going to start here and then just kind of bring this back in a diagonal type of a way, like this, and just kind of pulling that paint towards me as the viewer. I'm going to put the same thing for these legs in through here, so just kind of pulling them back in a diagonal type of way, starting at the bottom of the leg and then just kind of pulling it back in a diagonal way. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath the full ladder itself. So we've got a little bit of a shadow in the grass. And because I'm using a little bit of water on my brush as well, that's allowing me to see some of the colors underneath that shadow. So that makes it look really nice and natural. And then you can do as many little tweaks as you want to get this to be any brighter or darker or whatever you like for your details to be. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, I suppose you could even put a little shadow underneath these little steps if you wanted to. But once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for our painter and her palette. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are red, pink, brown, yellow, white, and maybe some gray. But I'll call them out as we're going to be using them. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to make myself a couple of custom colors. One of them is going to be a custom skin color that we're going to be using for the base coat of her feet, her hands, and her hair. And then the other will be a custom color that we'll use for her clothing. So I've already pre-mixed myself this skin color that I want to use for my for those areas that I mentioned. So how I got to that was I utilized a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown, about equal parts, and then a little bit of white. And then I start spinning it together. So you might not have the exact same quantity of red or of yellow that I put into my mixture. So after you spin it, what you can do is just adjust it accordingly. So this is a little bit dark, so I'm going to put a little bit more white into my mixture. If it was too red, I could counteract that with a little bit of yellow or a little bit of brown. But right now, it looks like I've got a pretty good tone here, but I need to go a little bit lighter in order for it to look the way that I want it to. That's looking pretty good. And what I like to do, you can make any skin color that you want. You can have yours lighter or darker or pinker or more yellow than mine. But what I like to do, I usually use my skin as a visual reference. So I take my paint color and I can just put it right up to my skin. This is a little bit pinker than mine, but I'm going for a young person, so their skin tends to, in my opinion, be a little pinker than mine. Mine is very pale, so we'll go for a nice pink, cheerful kind of color for the skin. So this is looking pretty good for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in my hands, and again, you don't have to go perfect on this. I'm really just kind of giving myself a little bit of a base coat that's going to work for for doing details and stuff like that. I only have this little tiny thumb in through here. If you go in about painting and you don't think that you want to bring your paint color as far out as your chalk mark is, that's okay. Just leave a little bit of that chalk mark. You can always erase it with water or anything, a eraser or water, whatever works for you. I'm also going to use this color as the base color for the hair. So I'm going to do this whole head in this color in through here. So this is going to give me a lot of great color options when I go to do the details on the hair. It's going to provide me with this nice neutral type of a base, which will allow me to go light or dark as I decide to do the hair later. I'm going to have her wearing a ponytail, so I know that I'm going to want some of this hair to come down her back, so I'm just going to pull down some paint down into this kind of pointy area down the back, and when I go to put my details on the head, that'll make more sense, but this just brings it down into the back. I'm also going to be making her have bare feet, so I'm putting this color on her feet. And again, if you don't want to go all the way out to the pencil or the chalk, that's okay. We're going to be seeing the underside or the bottom side of this foot here. So I think maybe I would just have a little toe kicking out there. Just trying to imagine what the bottom side of the foot would look like. It'd probably be kind of on the flatter side. And this one over here, I'm just going to see her little toes out the end of her pants. So I'm just going to put a little cute spot there with the skin color, and again we'll manipulate it a little bit more as we go through the painting process. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to be utilizing a custom color for the clothing. So I've pre-mixed mine here so you can see where I'm headed. How I got to that was I utilized blue, pink, red, I got a whole bunch of colors in this one, red, and some white. So I'm just making mine into like this really pretty mauve type of color. You could have blue clothing, you could have pink clothing, you could really have it in whatever color that you would like. This is your little person painting the sky. You can really, I think I want some more red and white in here. You can really have it go into whatever color zone that you would like. I'm gonna put some more pink in here. There we go. Now we're getting into that mauve-y kind of color that I was looking for. And then once you've got it into the color that you're looking for, just give it a good spin. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but whatever is speaking to you. I'm going to utilize this color as my base for the clothing. So I don't want to really lose my line in through here. So as I do my areas, if I feel like I need to preserve some of that line for visual painting purposes, you can just leave a little bit of that chalk showing. As I come down in through here, I will paint over that chalk just because I know that the back of the leg, I can use like this spot as my visual reference to where the leg splits and stuff like that. So if you feel like you're going to have trouble understanding where those markers are, then you can certainly leave some of that chalk. But if you're confident with the with being able to follow like the bumps on the edges that we've designated, then you can paint right over that chalk mark. As I get down towards the bottom of the pants, I really like to have some good movement in my clothing. So I'm gonna give some exciting kind of ripples to the edges of my pants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down to her foot in through here, bump it out just a little bit, and then I'm going to put it down on the ladder a little bit. So this is going to make it look like the pants are maybe a little bit too long, and maybe they're just kind of dragging on the ground a little bit, as my pants often do, because my legs are not the longest in the world, and the pants always seem to be too long for me. And then over on this side, I'm going to have it just kind of wrapped around the bottom of her foot, and we'll just see a little bit of it over in the front edge of it. And again, we're going to put some other detail on these clothing pieces, so you don't have to worry about them being perfect right now, but if you can get those little bumps in place, that's awesome. And then the shirt isn't very tricky at all. Just going to kind of run it right around her, oops, that was in the sky, run it right around her hair. And if I bump into the hair, that's okay. Well, again, we're going to be doing lots of other information, just bringing it into her shirt, bringing it right to my chalk lines. I'm even painting over my chalk lines. And again, if you have some lines that you don't want to paint all the way out to, just let them dry and then erase them with either water or an eraser. And then I'm just going to paint over that shoulder mark and just bring this all the way up to her wrist. And again, it's clothing, so I can bring these little edges out around her wrist, so that way it looks like it's a little cuff of her shirt. Or, maybe it's too long, because again, some of us have shorter arms and our sleeves are always too long too. That's when we have petite bodies that we do not have long arms and long legs. Everything's too long for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring this right down to my chalk. And again, if you need to leave that little edge, feel free to do so. It will disappear as we're painting in. And you might not get a perfect coverage. You might see, some of your background through here. That's all right, because we'll cover that as well. And then all I need to do is my my palette. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that gray color plus maybe a little bit of brown and white. So I have my gray. I'm just going to add a little bit of brown and white so I can have like a light kind of color for my palette. I don't want it to go all the way white because this is seemingly in the night scene, so I don't want this to go super white. So I just have like a light tannish gray color, and I'm just going to color the whole thing in, bringing it all the way to the edges. We'll put some fun details on it later. Bringing it right to her little thumb in through here, and again we'll make it look like it's got a little bit more substance to it with all the paint splatters and stuff that the palette can have. And you can certainly reshape this palette as much as you want to. Maybe you just want yours to be round, or maybe you want yours to be square. Maybe you want to have an easel up on this, you know, also standing on the land, or a paint bucket, or whatever works for you is totally fine. And then we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your palette painted in, or your base coat painted in, and you've got your girl and or your little person and all that base coat on, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting some planets. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm probably going to use all the colors on my palette. So I'm just going to call them out as I use them, because I'm not going for, again, photorealism on here. I'm just going to have some fun painting my planets. I might do one that's like maybe representational of Saturn or Mars or Pluto, but I'm not an expert on planets, and I'd probably get them wrong if I tried to really say, this is this one and this is this one. So I'm just going to have some fun, which you can certainly do the same. I'm thinking this person is having a lot of fun painting the planets too, so they might not be thinking of the exact ones, but you can take yours into whatever galaxy that you would like to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick base coat for them all, and then maybe put a little bit of details on them. So I'm going to start with a couple of yellow-ish planets. So I'm going to dip my brush a little bit in my yellow and a touch in my white. So not a lot of either, but enough where I'm going to give myself a nice kind of yellowish base coat on this one up in through here. Maybe a little bit more yellow. And I picked up brown too, so I have yellow, brown, and white on my brush right now. And you can find your own personal method to get a nice circle. Sometimes I like to just kind of stick my brush in the canvas and then just kind of spin it around. My hand is pretty good with just kind of guiding me into a nice circular type of shape. I'm going to do a similar color one to this one. So again, just some yellow, white, and brown on my brush at the same time. So I have kind of an assortment of colors on here, but I'm just doing kind of a thin coat so I can have some sort of color represented. You can have nice crisp edges, or you can make it look like it's kind of glowing by just putting soft edges around the exterior. So that'll be up to you. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to go for this one in through here. I'm just going to put some more brown and maybe a touch of white on my brush. So brown and white. So this one will be a little bit on the duller color side. So going in through here, just bringing it all the way to my chalk mark. And again, it doesn't have to be really smooth around the edges. It certainly could be. If you want yours to be really nice and smooth, you could certainly bring it into that realm. I'm going to pick up out with my dirty brush a little bit of white. I'm going to have a light kind of beigey one up in through here. So, or maybe this is just a big huge star. You could certainly use your imagination on that one, but I just have a little bit of white and a touch of brown on my brush for that one. I think I'm going to head on over to here. So this one, I think I'm going to use some of my clothing color. So I didn't wash my brush again. I picked up some of my clothing, that mauve color, plus maybe a little bit of red. So I have my mauve plus red right now. And again, you can paint these whatever color you want them to be. The colors in the Milky Way or a galaxy have an assortment of colors within them, so you can, you know, Google it and do them exactly as they're meant to be, or you can just have some fun with them. I'm going to do a couple of blue ones in through here. So again, not going to wash my brush. I'm going to pick up some blue, brown, and white on my brush to make this one up in through here. Maybe a little bit more blue so I can get it a little bit darker. So that was blue, brown, and white. And again, I'm just going for a base coat right now, and then I'll put a little bit of detail to give them a little bit of shape to them, but just getting the base coat on in order to give me something, a nice solid structure to build maybe a little bit of a highlight and or a shadow with in a minute. So just getting this so it's not so my paint's not too thick. And I'm going to do another, oops, we got a little bit from my hand down here. I'm going to do another little blue one in through here, and then I think I'm going to wash my brush for the last two planets. So once I've got this blue one on in through here, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to go in. This one's going to be pretty darn red, and this one I'm going to have like an orangey type of color. So I'm going to start with this one over here, and I'm going to go red and yellow are my colors on my brush. And so I've got red and yellow, and I'm just going to utilize them together as a base coat for this particular planet. And then the next one that I do over there, I think I'm going to do maybe red and brown, just to kind of give myself, again, a little bit of an assortment of colors. So I'm going to pick up some red and brown for this one. So this one will be a little bit darker than the other one. And then once I've got them all on here, I'm going to do very minimal details in order to give them a little bit of a 3D type of look to them. So all I really need to do is add a highlight and a shadow, and maybe some little texture if we have ones that have stripes or decorations or whatever on them. So I'm going to go in for these two first. So these are going to be my yellowish ones. I'm going to be using the same colors, yellow, white, and brown, but I'm going to use them kind of individually. So right now I just picked up some white paint, and I'm going to put like a little bit of a highlight over here on the left side, and then just kind of pull it in these striped type of motion around the planet. So this is going to give it some additional information and maybe make it look like it's got a highlight and some markings on it. I just picked up yellow and brown, so this is going to give me a little bit of a shadowy type of side to it. So I'm going to use these same colors over on this one over here. So wiping my brush off, picking up a little bit of yellow and white to just make sure I have the center area as bright as I want it, and I can put a little bit extra white in a highlight type of area, and then I can use a little bit of brown in a shadowy type of area. This is where I would kind of try and get rid of as much of my outline as needed. And now I'm just picking up some white paint. This one's going to get a nice kind of like Saturn. I have this stripe around it. So oops, I just dipped my hand in that red. So I'm going to start over on this side and just give myself this little like oval type of a shape around it, and you could do 1 or 2 rings, whatever is visually appealing to you. And then I'm going to just kind of cruise along onto this one. Going to pick up white plus my my clothing color to give myself a little bit of a highlight. I'm now going to pick up blue as my shadowy kind of color over on the other side, and then just kind of get it to blend in here, picking up white plus my mauve color, again, just to give a little bit of a highlight. And really what I'm looking to do is just get them so they're not totally flat of a color. So you can, if you want yours to be, you know, solid and just a flat kind of color, that's totally fine. But if you want them to have a little bit of dimension to them, just giving them that little bit of a highlight totally works. I'm going to go in for this one right now, just wiping my brush off, picking up a little bit of white paint, give myself a little bit of a highlight over here on this left hand side, and they could be illuminated. I'm picking up a little brown now. These planets can be illuminated from each other, so their highlights can really sit on any side of them. You could have a highlight on the left side of one and on the right side of another. It's totally up to you. These tiny ones don't need much. I'm just going to put a little bit of white paint as a highlight and maybe just blend it out. Same thing with this little blue one, just a little bit of white paint and blending it out. So the small ones are really fun because you don't really have to do much to them. And then I've got these two reddish ones. So this one is going to have a lot on it. I'm going to do a lot of dotting because I want it to look really kind of textured. I just picked up a good amount of white paint, and I'm going to kind of get this edge going and just kind of dot some vibrant colors in through here. So right now, dotting in some white paint to give it some texture, wiping my brush off, picking up yellow paint now to give some yellow kind of markings throughout this planet in through here. Oops, that was almost too much yellow paint. And this one I'm really kind of loading on with some heavy colors because I'm looking to give it some nice textural element to it. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of red so I can put some nice red in through here. And then you can just play with that as much as you want. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'll utilize the remnants to put my highlight on this one. So a little bit of a highlight in through here, and then just going to kind of rub it out into the darker side. This one I think I might use a little bit of black actually as my shadow on this right hand side. So I'm picking up a touch of black paint just so I can get this one to kind of pop out, and so we can see the edge of it because it is kind of a darker planet that I have painted in through here. Just wiped my brush off, picked up a little bit more red paint, and then you can just fiddle with these as much as you want. We are going to be utilizing oh, I missed this blue one in through here. Hold on. Let me finish this red one. I want to get that blue one too before I finish. We are going to be utilizing this same small brush, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this blue one. I just put blue and white on my brush at the same time to give myself a little bit of a highlight in through here. And then I think I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of yellow also to make this look like it's got a little bit of green on the back side of it. So blue and yellow is what I'm going to do over here on this back side of it, just to give it a little bit more of a color variation. And then you can, again, just play with it as much as you want, giving yourself as much design or texture within your planets as you want. And then once you've got them all nice and done, we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish her clothing. So I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are that mauve type of color, plus black, and maybe a little bit of white as well. And you can certainly tweak these colors as you feel fit as you're going through the process. If you want them to be lighter or darker, that's totally fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my shadowy areas in first, and then I'm going to build my way to the light. So my shadow areas are going to be kind of between her legs and on the back side of her legs, down by the cuffs of her pants, underneath her shirt, underneath her hair, underneath her arms. Those will be my shadowy kind of areas, and then my light areas will work their way to the regular color of the clothing, and then I'll put little highlights on the edges of her from the planet light source. So I'm going to start with my mauve color plus a teeny bit of black paint on my brush. Not a lot, little tiny bit. This is going to just kind of help control how much light and dark I have. I'm going to first separate these legs in through here. So this is going to be the separating point in through here, and this is just going to give me kind of a shadowy type of area behind the legs and tell the viewer kind of where these legs split. The leg is being kicked up in through here, so I'm going to have a little bit more shadow on the back side of this leg in through here. Something like that. And you don't have to go all the way black. That's why I'm using just a teeny tiny bit of it with my clothing color. I'm going to put a little bit underneath the shirt in through here. So just a little bit on my brush, and if you feel like you have too much, just wipe it off on your paper towel. And then I'm just going to kind of get it to rub out into my clothing color. You can always pick up more of your clothing color. So I just picked up more of that mauve to make sure that I've got it blended in. And if you do too much, just let it dry and then you can paint over it with that mauve color. So I'm going to put a little bit more shadow down at the bottom of her pants. So the mauve plus a little bit of black. I'm going to put some little creases in her cuffs back in through here, and then maybe a little bit of shadow up that calf area a little bit. So hardly any paint is on my brush, and again I'm using the mauve and black, and I keep dipping my brush in the mauve in order to control how light or dark that goes. I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit over on this right hand side too. So I'm considering this to be the back side. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this darkness on in through here, some in the cuffs of her pants in through here to make it look like it's all nice and bumpy because it's too long for her. And then I'm just going to make sure that this shadowy area kind of blends up and out into the color of the pants. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to still work on my shadowy area, so reloading my brush with a little bit of black and my mauve color. Going to go underneath her hair or right next to her hair, as if her hair is giving a shadow onto her back, as well as up into her shoulder area, because her arm would kind of be casting a shadow on her back as well. And then just going to kind of rub this out into the neighboring area, picking up a little bit more of both the mauve and a touch of black to get a little bit of a shadowy area underneath this the side of her in through here. Just picking up a little bit more black, so there we go. So we can have that kind of dip in the crook of her back. And again, it doesn't have to go all the way black. That's why I'm utilizing both of these colors at the same time on my brush in order to be able to control the darkness of it. So still more of the black and the mauve. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath this this elbow in through here. I wiped my brush off, picked up a little bit more of the mauve to get it to blend out and up into the side of her arm, something like this. And we'll put little highlights on in a minute, but this is just kind of setting the stage for where these darker areas would go. I'd have a little bit dark of an area on this back side of the arm, but again, I don't want it to go all the way dark. I just want to give the information that it is in fact the opposite side of the clothing. I'm going to finish painting in through here, so I just picked up some more of that mauve on my dirty brush. So I probably have a little bit of the black, which is great because that's going to add just a little bit of a tinge to it back here. Picking up a little bit more of my mauve. Now's the time where I'm going to get rid of my chalk mark because I don't need it anymore. So I'm just bringing this all the way down to the end, making sure that I've got it fully colored in. I'll put highlights in a minute along the edges just to get those to look like they're being illuminated by the planets. But right now, just finishing coloring in this portion. I think I'm going to put this a little bit darker on the back side of this wrist in through here, just to make sure that that's got enough on it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding my little highlights to the clothing. So I just washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up mauve plus white, and this is going to give me these little bits of highlights along the edges of the clothing that are going to tell the viewer exactly where that light source is coming from and how much it is illuminating the edges of the clothing. You can kind of put it on the little feet, the little piece of clothing down by the feet, maybe a little bit on this side in through here. And if you wanted to go lighter, just pick up a little bit more white on your brush. And I'm not doing much with it, just kind of putting a little highlight on those edges. And you don't even have to put it on the entire edge. You can kind of skip along wherever you feel. Maybe there's a little bit on the edge of that shoulder, maybe a little bit on the edge of that shoulder, maybe a little bit on this forearm in through here. So again, just white plus a little bit of mauve. And then you just kind of keep fiddling with it. If you want this to look like it's got a little ripple in it, you can pull some of that highlight in a bit. It'll be, whatever really speaks to you as you wanting it however bright or dark that you want it, and you can kind of adjust the corners of the clothing if you need to. And then when you've got it nice and set, maybe we've got a little tiny highlight over here. Once you've got it set, we are going to be utilizing this same paintbrush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're going to finish our hands, our feet, and our hair. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are the skin color that we made, black, brown, white, and maybe a little bit of yellow. So what I'm really looking to do is just put some highlights and shadows on my feet and my hands, and then on my hair I want to just give it some detail for maybe a ponytail and some highlights and shadows. So I'm going to do my hands and feet first. I'll start with my feet in through here. I'm going to use my skin color plus a tiny bit of black paint, very itty bitty little tiny bit on my brush. I'm going to put a little shadow where my foot kind of meets the pants. I'm going to put some darkness at the bottom of this foot because I feel it would be pretty darn dark. I actually think I'm going to pick up some brown right now to just give it a little bit darker of a tone down here where the bottom of the foot would be. And then I'm going to put the same thing, brown plus a tiny bit of black over on this right foot just at the base of it to just tell you that there's maybe a little bit of a shadow underneath that toe. I'm going to bring this brown and black down underneath the pants too to just put a tiny bit of a shadow on the ladder. So just a little bit of brown and black is doing this for me, giving me the edge of her little toe and also giving me a little bit of a shadow on that on the ladder. I'm going to put another little shadow here too to indicate the shadow of the leg on the ladder in through here too, so something like that. Then what I'm going to do, I'm actually putting a little bit more black on my brush so I want this shadow to be a little bit darker. So I put a little bit more black on my brush to get that shadow into place. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a little highlight on the tip of the toes. So my skin color plus a tiny bit of white paint will help me to get this little tiny highlight on the tip of her toe. I don't need much. I just am looking to give this little kind of cute highlight, maybe a little tiny highlight on the edge of her toe in through here, just to tell the viewer, you know, this is being illuminated too. We don't need to do much, just kind of get that information in through there. And then this is just the side of the foot that would be illuminated. I'm going to go to do the hands now. So just a tiny bit of black and brown is where I'm going to start to give myself a little hole or a shadow between the palette and her finger in through here. So that could represent a shadow or a hole in the palette. And then I'm just going to put the skin color on my brush just to make sure that that's fully painted. And then I'll put just a little tiny highlight with white paint to give myself maybe the little knuckle on her thumb. So just a little white paint will do the trick there. I don't need much, just something to make sure that it's fully painted. And then same thing over here, going to put a little bit of black and brown on my brush just to make sure that I've got a nice shadow maybe where the hand meets the clothing. And then I'm going to have a paintbrush being held in this hand, so I don't really need to do much. I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up some skin color plus white right now to give myself a little bit of a highlight on this outside edge of the hand, because that's the side to me where the highlight or where the light source is. I just picked up some of my skin color just to get that to blend in. That's all I'm going to do for the hand, nothing major. I'm going to move to the hair. So right now I wiped my brush off. I'm picking up some black and brown on my brush. I'm going to kind of designate where I want the ponytail to be. So I'm going to give a little bit of an arcing type of shape in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of outline where I want the exterior part of the ponytail to be. So once I've done that, I'm just going to put some shadowy type of marks as I feel that the hair would be pulled in towards this area, which will give me the movement away from the part that's being wrapped around. I think that this is hair being wrapped around hair, so that's how I'm seeing it in my brain. You might see it a little bit differently, but now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up some brown paint. I didn't wash my brush, but I picked up some brown paint just so I can get a little bit of some shadowy colors in through the rest of the hair. So this is just brown paint on my brush right now, and I'm intermingling it with the black. I'm intermingling it with the original skin color. So the original base color that we did is providing us with a wonderful base that's giving us a nice natural color to this hair with the brown on top of it. I'm going to do these directional brush strokes, so it'll tell us what direction the hair is moving in or being pulled in, and then I'm going to bring that brown up in through here as well. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of yellow and white without washing my brush, a tiny bit of yellow and white on my brush. This is going to provide me with my highlights on the hair. So a little bit of yellow and white, and then I'm just going to kind of pull this back from the top, maybe a little bit on here, maybe a couple of streaks down in through here. I'm going to pick up just white paint right now, give myself a real bright highlight over on this right hand side, and just pull it back as if those planets are illuminating this young person's hair in the night sky. And then of course you can fiddle with this all you want. You can bring back some of the skin tone if you want to intermingle that more, or more brown, or whatever is speaking to you. You can make as many little tweaks as you want, and then we will be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our palette and we're going to paint our paintbrush. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm literally going to be using every color on my palette because she's using every color on our palette too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put my paintbrush in place. I'm going to be using that light tannish gray color that we used for the palette as the base color for my paintbrush. So I want it to look like she's, you know, holding on to it, and I'm using my own hand as my visual reference. So I'm going to have the paintbrush kind of coming on the outside of her hand and through her fingers. So we're going to say these are her fingers. So I'm going to have, and she's going to be holding a pretty darn big paintbrush. So we're going to have this coming through. And if you feel like you need to repaint her fingers after this, or you know, do anything of that nature, you can certainly do that. But right now I'm just kind of giving myself this base line where I want the paintbrush to go, and making it just kind of nice and pointy at the end. And then I'm going to utilize this light gray as my base for the tip of it too, because I'm going to want it to be of a nice bright red, and having this light base underneath it will help me to accomplish that. So, and you can curve the little tip too. That'll make it look like the brush is in motion if you want to. So something like that, just make it nice and pointy. And I'm going to just bring this a little bit maybe wider as it's coming towards the head of the bristles, or to the bristle part. Yeah, something like that. That works. She's a little person with a big paintbrush. And then what I'm going to do, while that's kind of drying and settling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and put the paint on here. But I want to give this a little bit of dimension. So I have my light gray. I'm going to put a touch of white paint on my brush as well. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight over here on the right side. So I have the light gray plus white on my brush, and I'm just utilizing this to give myself a little bit of dimension on this palette, so it's not just flat gray. So something like that. And then on the left hand side, I'm going to utilize that light gray plus a touch of black on my brush, and give myself a little bit of a shadow side over on this side. So that gives you, and you could put a little shadow underneath here on her arm if you wanted to show that the palette has cast a little bit of a shadow on her arm. That would be pretty neat. And if you needed to put anything in where that thumb is, you certainly could do that too. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put a whole bunch of splotches of paint on my palette. So wash and dry my brush and just have fun with this. You can do any color you want. I'm going to do some yellow, just kind of, oh, I had a dirty brush, so that's a fun, unique color yellow. Washing and drying my brush. I'm going to pick up some pink, put a big old pink spot in here, wash and dry my brush, pick up some red. You can have big spots, you can have little spots. I'm doing some blue now, so blue. I'm going to do some, maybe a little black. We've got a little black in through there. Definitely a big old spot of white, because we always need to have white on our palette. So maybe we've got a big old spot of white in through there. What color am I missing here? Oh, we need, we got pink. Oh, maybe we'll use some of the, her mauve color from her clothing too. So a little bit of that color. And again, just have some fun with it. You don't have to have it exactly as mine, but having fun with it. Then I'm going to just wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a little tiny black shadow underneath my paint. So just a little black shadow underneath these, or a dark shadow will give them a little bit of dimension. So just a tiny bit of black paint. If you run into wet paint, that's okay. It'll make it look nice and natural. And then I'll wash my brush and put a little bit of white paint on my brush, which is going to give me these little glistening highlights in the paint splashes or splatters in through here. So this, again, just something that adds that little bit of extra realness to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint my paintbrush. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to put red paint on my brush because she's painting the red planet. So a little bit of red paint, and I'm just going to kind of streak it in like this. These are the brushes, or the bristles to the brush. So if you see some of that gray underneath, that's okay. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on it in a minute, but just getting the red on there. I'm going to put some little highlights on my brush handle. So just a little bit of white will give me a nice kind of little bit of a highlighted bit of information on here. Maybe a little streak down the center so we can all see it. And then maybe a little bit of white in the paint bristles themselves. So again, not to say that it's being painted white, but just to give me a little bit of highlight in that paint itself. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up a tiny bit of black paint just to give myself a little bit of shadow over on this left side within the bristles, and maybe a little bit down this left side of the brush itself. And then you can do any little tweaks that you want. We're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. Actually, I'm putting a little bit more red paint on my brush. I'm going to put a big red splotch on this planet in through here, so it looks like it's nice and wet and like she's just painted it. There we go. And we're going to wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going to go bottom right on this one with some red paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very inspirational image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.